Excellent. Welcome this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, depending on where you're joining us from. As always, we are going to just give a few seconds for our attendees to trickle in. We know that we don't want to miss any of the very important presentation that is going to be brought to us today by Daniel, Kai, and Jacob. So we are just going to give it just a couple of minutes. I'm going to kill about 20 seconds here, just smiling at you guys. And then I'll go into what's going on in and around the INCBA. And then, of course, what's going on with our educational schedule and our in-person events. So we got to be in Las Vegas this past week. And so this was, for us, our first major national event that we've attended as an organization since COVID hit. So MJ Biz was incredible. I think that the numbers for the actual conference were around 27,000. So Vegas was very crowded this past weekend. Everyone that we spoke to that was a local said that that was the most crowded they'd seen the city in about 2 years. So it was a very successful event. We at INCBA had one of our unique social events. And so Zach Carson, of course, the individual that helps us set up these webinars, is also an excellent in-person planning individual. And so him and his company Imaginal helped us set up just a wonderful party. We did have on-site consumption. We had a bar and some bites. And so our next one is coming up in December. For anyone that missed Vegas or anyone that enjoyed seeing us in person, we do hope that you'll come in December to San Francisco. That is the NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association's Cannabis Business Summit and Expo. Us as an organization will be putting on 3 hours of CLE courses on December 15th. That is a little bit of an additional charge from the conference expo and those speakers that NCIA is organizing. But coming with that ticket is obviously, as always, access to our social event. So we will be hosting a party on the evening of December 15th. As well as a federal policy summit on December 16th. And so December 15th, those 3 hours of CLE are all focused on state licensing. So everything from team building to technical drafting and application writing to back-end issues such as litigation and some of the more specific issues like social equity programs. We'll be taking you through all of those on December 15th. December 16th, we switch lanes into federal policy. So we'll be looking at the United States from a federal perspective with a special focus on the TTB, as well as the new pathway through the FDA, at least new proposed pathway through the FDA for cannabis products. So we hope to see you in December at NCIA's Cannabis Business Summit and Expo. Those tickets for our portion will be going on sale, I believe, at the end of the week. I will send out an email blast, so please stay tuned for that. In terms of our next webinar that's coming up, November 10th is our next live online webinar. We'll be focusing on litigation in the United States with a special focus on intellectual property issues. And so we'll be having the lead attorneys from the In Re Joy T case. This is a case that has to do with the trademark and the lawful use requirement that is required to be analyzed as individuals apply for trademarks through the US Patent and Trademark Office. Thank you all so much for joining us. I think that I have taken up quite enough time from this panel. So I'm going to hand it off to Daniel. Daniel is an excellent attorney. I think that this is your third time speaking with us, Daniel. It's always a pleasure to have you here. I'm going to let you introduce your fellow panelists, and then I'm going to let you talk about what's going on in Germany right now. So thank you everybody for attending, and Daniel, take us away.
Thank you very much for this nice introduction, Chris. I'm actually sitting here in Switzerland, so it's even a bigger honor to be able to speak about what's happening in Germany. And there's actually quite similar developments, not exactly, but there are very good developments, at least, that we can speak about today. So just quickly to the panelists, Jacob Sons is the co-founder, managing director, and general counsel of Cansativa in Germany. Jacob started his professional career as a corporate and commercial litigation lawyer with international law firms. He's also a PhD candidate at the University of Marburg, focusing on pharmaceutical law and the national and international regulation of cannabis as a pharmaceutical product. He is leading the legal and regulatory team at Cansativa and, among others, also managed the GMP and GDP certification of 2 German sites of the company. He also prepared the first importation of product samples from Latin America and Australia to Germany. Now, Kai, as many of you already probably know, has been an attorney since 2003. He has served at the time small and medium-sized businesses and family offices, and since 2017 with the legalization of medical cannabis and also the first CBD products in the German market, he has been advising international and domestic CBD and medical cannabis import companies since then, with focus mostly on regulatory questions. He regularly publishes articles also on prohibition partners and in German law journals. He speaks at cannabis conferences, most recently at the International Cannabis Business Conference and the CB Expo in Zurich. And he is obviously also a member of various associations, including an advisory board member of the INSPA and also an official advisor to the European Industrial Hemp Association. Now, short introduction to myself. I'm a previous commodity trader turned corporate and product regulatory attorney with the focus on the cannabis market. We created here actually the first dedicated cannabis desk at one of the leading law firms in Switzerland, MLL. And I'm also on the international committee of the INSPA, and I'm also representing the largest Swiss cannabis industry association, the IG Hanf in Switzerland, before the authorities. So we have really a lot of stuff to cover today. So I'm gonna dive right in if you don't mind. We just had the title is clear, cannabis policy in Germany after the election. There was an election just recently. It looks like there will be a so-called traffic light coalition. And I have a question to Kai first. What does that actually mean in general? And the second question, what does it mean for cannabis?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Daniel. So yeah, the federal elections for almost 4 weeks ago, and we will see a fundamental change in almost every kind of policy area, especially in cannabis. So the Conservative Party, the CDU, was in government for almost 16 years with Chancellor Angela Merkel, and no one expected that the CDU would lose the elections like this in a landslide but it turned out to be like that. So we have a social democratic leading party with Olaf Scholz as the chancellor, and we have two smaller parties with the liberals, the FDP, and the Green Party. They started pre-negotiations, they called it, pre-negotiations, and then they decided, though there are severe differences in policy attitudes, to start real negotiations on a new government. They are quite confident. They are saying they want to build a modern society, they want to rebuild, they want to modernize Germany, they want to tackle the environment issues. What is at stake is the budget of the federal budget and tax increases or tax decreases. So there's a standstill, but in almost every other societal question, they want to modernize Germany. This doesn't make halt at the question in regard to the question of cannabis policy. So if you want to have a modern society, if you want to modernize the society, you have to pursue a modern drug policy. And that's what they want. That's what they said in their programs before the election. Especially the Green Party is in favor of legalization for decades. They drafted a Cannabis Control Act in 2015. It's a complete law covering all aspects from social responsibility, product quality, taxing, tax facilities, foreign trade issues, the international law obligations. It's about 60 pages, and it will be the blueprint, the role model for any legislative change in Germany, I suppose. What we will see now is it's the exciting phase right now. So in the next 2 to 3 weeks, they are negotiating the new government. They said 1 week ago the new chancellor will be elected at the 6th of December. So in the course of November, we will see their decision, or what will happen. The Social Democrats said we are in favor of a new cannabis policy, but we want to have model projects beforehand. The Switzerland knows about that. You introduced model products as well. But the Greens and the Liberals, they don't think that this is necessary, because we have had enough experience in Canada with legalization, in the US federal states like Colorado, Oregon, Washington, etc. And we have enough data to say that legalization won't increase the consumption of cannabis, especially not under the young age, under the adolescents, within the group of the adolescents. We know that these states generated tax revenue, that thousands, 10,000s of jobs were created. I think that we will, at first step of the new government will be to decriminalize cannabis, the possession and the consumption of cannabis. For private persons, this should take place. Lots of associations and people are demanding that right now. So this will be the first act of the government to decriminalize cannabis. We have 185,000 criminal proceedings against consumers for THC cannabis, and we have a couple of thousands of criminal proceedings against CBD traders, CBD flower traders, CBD product traders, and this has to stop immediately. If you agree on a legalization, you have to decriminalize as your first act in government. That's what we will see in the first place, I guess. The debates and the hearings, how the legalization will finally look like, will take place, yeah, after December, after the new chancellor has been sworn in, and then the big discussions will go on. And this is part of our job, of the industry, of the cannabis industry, of the lawyers, to mingle in, to express their views, but I still think we will, at the end of this process, probably at the beginning of 2024, we will see a full legalization in effect in Germany.
Interesting. I'm sure, thanks, Kai. I'm sure that, in fact, this legalization for recreational purposes will have some potentially very far-reaching implications on the medical system that has been legalized already a while back. Maybe Jacob can weigh in on his views here on what these implications could look like.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a great question, Daniel. And maybe I start with framing what the medical system actually looks like right now. So we have a legal use of dronabinol, a substance that you will know as isolated THC since the late 90s. We have a system of individual exemptions from the Narcotics Act for individual patients for some years now. And when we observed the broader medical legalization in 2017, now almost 5 years ago, we observed that it has been created a well-functioning realm of cannabis supply that makes sure that patients have access to medicinal cannabis in very different types. It can be flowers, it can be isolated substances still as dronabinol, it can be standardized extracts. And what is very important that we have, and I think this is a game changer for a medical system, is that there is cost reimbursement in Germany. It is subject to certain requirements, and I think especially Kai will have some comments on if this is too narrow or not. But there is a system of cost reimbursement that grants access to cannabis for patients that would on their own not be able to afford and pay the medication. So we have in the public healthcare system roughly 90,000 patients that are in the public healthcare system that received a prescription of cannabis. And what is very important that first of all, not everyone that is in the public healthcare system is eligible to cost reimbursement. And there are many people that are not, or there are not many, but there are people that are not in the public healthcare system, but that hold a private insurance. So there is a big number of people that actually have to pay the medication on their own. And what we observe is that we have a significant market size. It is much money in the industry, but still the product is quite expensive for the patient. So how the prices are built up is that you take the manufacturer price, you add on whatever is added by the wholesalers, and then you have a significant markup in the pharmacies. And this markup was for quite some time, roughly, to simplify here, 100% of the price that the pharmacy pays to the wholesaler. So you have you have doubled the price only at the stage of the pharmacy. And since there was a modification on the price building mechanisms, it is a bit lower, but it is still significantly more expensive than products that are grown in the black market. So what we will observe is that once we have a recreational market, that many people will opt to move over to the recreational market and lose their connection to the medical system. And I think this is a benefit for all those patients that could not afford the medication if it comes from a medical system, because there is such a price bidding mechanism, but it can be a disadvantage for anyone who is in a position that he should see the doctor regularly, that he should see the pharmacy regularly. So we will see a shift of patients from the medical system over to the recreational system, with all those implications that this will have in terms of therapy adherence, therapy quality, because they actually will go over to self-medication. This is something from the quality of therapeutical options, and from the economic perspective, yes, it will be some shift observed, or we will see that only those people will remain in the medical system that are eligible for cost reimbursement, because there are no good arguments for someone who has to pay on their own to go to the pharmacy, because it is more complicated. He has to see the doctor, get a prescription, go to the pharmacy, maybe wait a day instead of just going into, for example, a licensed dispensary. So there will be some conflicts here, both on the level of economics and on the level of what is intended for the patient. Is he still a patient, or is he opting to be a consumer?
Jacob, just weighing in here, don't you think there is a little bit of an inhibition still because of the stigma for a lot of potential patients to actually go and seek the medical attention that they would require, that it's not just a question of cost reimbursement by the insurances?
I think there are two dimensions. The first is how patients face their own stigma. I think if people are convinced that cannabis will be an option, it is more or less free of stigma to at least ask a doctor. But on the other side, it will be hard to find someone on the sides of the pharmacies, the physicians that actually wants to prescribe. So there are only very few doctors in Germany that are responsible for most of the prescriptions in Germany. So if you are a patient that should receive a cannabis medication, then it's in most cases it's the patient that proactively seeks for this therapeutic option. And if we now have a legalized system, I think it will be even harder for physicians, for doctors to opt for a cannabinoid therapy from their own scientific perspective. So it will be still the pressure and the push from the patient, instead of the physician accepting that cannabinoids can be a therapeutic option. And I think if we move fast to a legalized system, it will be put into the drawer, okay, cannabis consumption, consumer market, and physicians might see from their perspective an even higher stigma to prescribe.
That is very interesting, and it's at least from what you just said, counterintuitive to what I would have assumed. We have in Switzerland, for example, around 3,000 to 4,000 patients that are having a special permit from the Federal Office of Public Health to get medical cannabis. Most of them are not reimbursed by the health insurance. And now with the change of the Narcotics Act that will probably be enacted mid or end of next year, we will see that every patient in Switzerland will be able to get access to medical cannabis much easier without this special permit. And also the export markets will open up, by the way. But the real question is, do you think that the liberalized system somehow can benefit in one way or another from this supply chain that's already been established? If already you're saying that it might not benefit from the system, the other way around, maybe a liberalized system can benefit from what you've been building over the last 5 years.
Yes, definitely. I'm quite sure that if you take what Kai already mentioned, for example, the Cannabis Control Act, and how this law sees or has a view on product quality, on supply chain, on safety, product safety, and to build a supply chain from seed to pharmacy or to dispensary in this case, I think that this blueprint has been taken from how narcotics are handled today. So if we take a look on what this model law, I would call it now, has requirements for the storage, it's almost identical to how cannabis in the medical system today is stored. If you look at what are the requirements for transportation, it's even more strict than how narcotics are handled today. Today, there is no license for a transportation business needed to transport narcotics. In the new system, it is required. I think it's ridiculous, but maybe this will be something that the lawmaker will take care of. But you can see that the pharmaceutical supply chain that we have, it assures product quality, traceability of batches from production to a dispensary. You know that there are rules in the pharmaceutical system that make sure that you qualify your suppliers, that you qualify everyone who takes product from you. There are documentation procedures that are identical to what the Cannabis Control Act foresees for a recreational system. So if I look at, for example, the Cansativa operations, it would be just switching the plug into a different switch over the plug from a medical system to a recreational system. And I think the big question will be, how will the lawmaker and the authorities look on businesses like Cansativa? So would we require to have separate product lines to supply recreational cannabis? Can it be in a same site? Do we have separate legal entities? Do we need some kind of different staff and so on? But process-wise, and what we actually do today, it's perfectly suitable for supplying cannabis to licensed dispensaries.
Perhaps, Kai, if you could shed some more light on what the Cannabis Control Act actually provides for the audience, and maybe I understand that this is not all set in stone, that there's still, it's basically a draft, right? It's a roadmap, and we believe that this roadmap is the most likely roadmap that will serve as a basis for more details to come. But where do you think will be the main pain points that will be still negotiated between the parties, and perhaps you can start giving a little bit of an overview of the main points of the Cannabis Control Act, because I don't think everybody's aware.
Sure. So the Cannabis Control Act is based on a free market model. Every company can take part. There are no limitations in licenses. If you're qualified, if you have the background, if you don't have a criminal record to a certain extent, you can apply for every license in the different sectors like cultivation, wholesale, import, export, science, and transport. So it's basically a free market model, a capitalistic free market model. Some restrictions I will come onto later. But the basic thought of the Cannabis Control Act is the social responsibility. So on the one hand, the decision is we will liberalize cannabis, we will give it free. Dispensing cannabis to adult, recreational cannabis to adults will be allowed. But on the other hand, we will take care on many, many aspects and issues of social responsibility. For example, your shop staff has to be trained. They have to obtain a special license, responsible selling. No one knows how exactly this certificate looks like and what the content of the education is. The law says the staff members have to have knowledge about how cannabis functions in your body, what happens in your body, and what is the psychoactive principle, what happens in your brain, and they have to identify risky patterns with their consumers. So if they think the consumers have a problem with cannabis, they are addicted or they can cope, then they have to talk to the consumer, and there have to be flyers in the shop of institutions for drug prevention and drug addiction, so that people easily can be recommended help on that. And several issues on this, for example. So, and the shop has to have a social concept, and we know that from the gambling halls, they also have to have social concepts, and these are the first severe costs which are occurring. You have to burden. So on the one hand, free market model, yes, but on the other hand, a strict social responsibility for your consumer, for your surrounding, where your shop is located. It is also regulated in this draft that that the federal states can set up minimum distances between a dispensary, a cannabis Fachgeschäft, and schools, kindergartens, and other institutions for youth, for young people. And so the problem might be in special places in the downtown, in the inner city. They are all over the place. There are kindergartens, there are schools, whatever. And if you have, for example, a very conservative country like Bavaria, which were against cannabis and which enforced the prohibition over the decades very, very strictly. And if they say, okay, let's have the minimum distances 2 kilometers. So you won't find any dispensary in downtown cities in Bavaria. And then you have to go in the industrial area, and then you have probably big stores. They are freshly built, newly erected. And I saw that, for example, in Washington, in Seattle. I talked to a dispensary owner there, and he was saying, we are trying to build a machine here. On Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, 2,500, 3,000 people coming here. And they just are supposed to go through. The first stop is flowers, the second stop is beverages, the third stop is edibles, then the vape pens, and then some merchandise. And he said, no, our staff doesn't have the time to talk to the people. It's very hard to talk to the bartenders because they are under pressure. They have to, and that's exactly what we doesn't want with these law, with this sort of social responsibility. Then you have a machine and you can't take care of your customer, and that's what the Cannabis Control Act is intending. So this is a very critical point. These two regulations. So the minimum distances between schools and cannabis dispensaries, and the federal states, according to this draft, are also allowed to set a minimum number of dispensaries in your jurisdiction, in your municipality. We have to talk about that if the Cannabis Control Act will be the blueprint. Because
okay, you mean a minimum or a maximum? A maximum. right?
A maximum,
number.
sorry, a maximum.
Okay.
A maximum.
Yes.
A maximum. Of course, the idea is that you don't want to have hard business and lots of shops in one place, so that maybe a concentration or tourist spot or whatever. The idea is clear, but enforced or used too extensively, it will lead to the point that too little dispensaries will open. We saw that in Canada and in California, and the black market can't be fought back if you don't have enough dispensaries. So you really have to take care that the regulatory framework gives the opportunity to open sufficient numbers of cannabis dispensaries, of course. And the second issue, of course, is the tax issue. The price, the end price for the consumer has to be on the same level like the black market price right now to really efficiently fight the black market. The liberals made unrealistic proposal. They wanted just to tax the THC content of the products, which would have led to 25-30 euros per gram on high THC strains. That's unrealistic. So the price has to be something like 10 to 12 euro for good quality. The consumer is probably really prepared to pay more than right now in the black market because the quality is controlled and everything is legal and everything is fine. But these are probably the two biggest points which can endanger cannabis legislation in the long run.
Okay, clear. A question here, a follow-up question. I would like to take you back on the subject of dispensaries. Do you see, Jacob, do you see pharmacists being the new bud tenders going forward?
No, I don't see them. Even though it might be a good argument for our current supply chain, I don't see that it makes sense. So the pharmacy as such has a certain aim in public healthcare. So they have to dispense, but they have to dispense medication and anything which has a health use. First of all, there's a rule that limits what pharmacies are allowed to sell. So they at least in Germany, they cannot sell, for example, technical stuff that has no medical use. They are not allowed to sell, for example, in an extensive manner, candy and so on. So there is a restriction on what they are allowed to sell. And why is it? Because they shall focus on what is their intent and their the reason for existence, which is healthcare. And if we now would start dispensing recreational cannabis in pharmacies, the only argument is that they actually had, or some of them actually had medicinal cannabis in the pharmacy, but they cannot guarantee exactly what Kai already outlined, the social concept, because there's no time for them. There is not a business case that would suit a pharmacy to train their staff accordingly, to maybe hire some additional staff, because there are different tasks in their focus areas. And I think it's already hard enough for pharmacies in Germany to guarantee a good level of education in medical in the medical ecosystem, and it's just not the right place to sell a recreational substance. I mean, we don't go to the pharmacy to buy our beer and wine.
Kai, do you agree?
Exactly, 100%. I mean, what we see right now is 2017, we started with 1,000 patients, and now we have probably 90,000. No one knows really exactly. What we see right now is that the prices are going down. So we started in 2017, 2018, you would have had to spend at least 22, 23 euro per medical cannabis gram. Whereas the Netherlands, for example, where the only company which is allowed to grow and sell medical cannabis is Bedrocan, the price for medical cannabis is 6 to 7 euros. Imagine that. So you had to pay 22 to 23 euros per gram. And now pharmacies are coming up specializing on cannabis, building up huge operations, and they are able to offer a gram of medical cannabis, best quality, pure stuff, also for 99 euro 99, or if you have special strains, but not more than 13 euro per gram. And on the other hand, we see institutions, medical institutions, or privately owned, which develop the business model of prescribing cannabis with doctors and providing the clinics furnished with everything, and doctors are working there. And people asking, and the prescription of medical cannabis in Germany is in the sole discretion of the doctor. So if you have a back pain, or if you have, like me, a glaucoma or whatever, you can now go to one of these clinics, pay 200 euros, get your prescription. The clinic will send your prescription directly to these newly established pharmacies, and you get your gram of cannabis for 1 euro, for 10 euro, maximum 13 euros.
And basically 9 to 12 euro is black market equivalent. That would
exactly.
Yeah.
And this is exactly right. I mean, many people thought they were recreational users, but in the end they were medical users because of certain conditions like pain, or not as severe or intense that they would need to really see a doctor or medication and reimbursement. I mean, if you have if you're a real pain patient, you need 100 and even more grams per month, and this is really a financial question then. So these patients, they really have to get reimbursed, but not everyone is necessary. So we see already this pharmacy line coming up, getting bigger, and probably this is also one of the solutions for the meantime, because the legalization can't take place overnight. That's not possible. The industry needs time to prepare for the new situation. Germany also has to terminate the single convention from 1961. And this is what the Greens propose, to terminate the single convention. And my suggestion is, or my proposal, my prediction is, if you terminate the single convention in March or April 2023, there's a 6-month termination period, and then you can enter on the 1st of January of 2024 with the liberalization of cannabis. That's probably the way we will do that. And in the meantime, we have to take care of the regular consumers. So we have to decriminalize the cannabis. We probably will have to allow home grow, because in terms of harm reduction, every gram which is not sold on the black market is a good gram, in my opinion. So we can either do that to a lower access conditions for medical cannabis on the one hand, so that doctors don't have to fear that they will get or prosecution or investigations. And on the other hand, to decriminalize cannabis and to allow home grow, to already allow home grow, so that the market demands can be met.
May I, before we go back to this, I would like to take you up on the subject of homegrown cannabis, as we've seen proposed in Italy recently, in Luxembourg. We'll come back to that in a minute. First, do you have an estimate, Jacob, perhaps being deep in the medical market, how many in Germany today, how many cannabis consumers are there? Do you know, more or less, for no matter which reasons? And how many of those are taking cannabis, even if procured in the black market, for for medical purposes?
So there is a number that is quite outdated. I think it's from 2015, relating to the overall total sum of cannabis consumers that actually confirm that they use. It's roughly 3 million people. We have for the medical side a number of 90,000 patients that are in the statutory and cost reimbursement system. And there is only estimations for the self-payers and privately insured people, but we estimate that it is up to 150 to 200,000 patients that receive medical cannabis from pharmacies. So it's not even 10% of people that consume. So it's still very hard to go down this aisle to get your cannabis from the pharmacy.
That's interesting. Just as a comparison, in Switzerland, I've mentioned the 3,000 to 4,000 people mark that are already in the system, basically. And out of a total, maybe these are also all outdated, probably quite outdated numbers. I think from 2 years ago, they should be probably significantly higher today, but between 300,000 and 350,000 estimated cannabis consumers in Switzerland out of a population of maybe 9 million, give or take. And we have, out of those 350, around 100,000 patients or consumers who are actually procuring cannabis from the black market today for medical purposes, which is staggering. It's almost every third consumer of cannabis is apparently consuming cannabis either because of he has back pain or sleep issues or whatever other indications there are. This just as a feedback. Now let's go back to the homegrown cannabis subject. I think that's a big subject because Kai mentioned earlier the free market model, and if every consumer can grow his own cannabis, how do you think this social equity issue can be addressed? How can you protect youth, for example, efficiently? What are in your views, the pros and cons of what Luxembourg and Italy are proposing at the moment? Let's start with Jacob.
Okay.
Yes, so maybe let me take the position that is somehow skeptical about home grow. I think that I fully understand that people want home grow because this would be like the very important pillar of a liberal and legalized system relating to cannabis. So if you legalize the plant, there should be a legal home grow. However, I think if our arguments are always, we want to protect children and minors, we want to prevent negative and concerning consumption patterns, we want to get into touch with the consumers to explain, to educate how cannabis is working in the body, what might be implications and effects of the plant in your body. I don't really get how this works with home grow because you don't see the consumers, you cannot educate, there's no kind of prevention. You can't tell people, no, you're not allowed to home grow because you're not 18, you're a minor. And all those arguments that are very strong in why we should legalize cannabis, I think might not be that convincing if we just allow everyone to home grow. And I think only with a view to how can we execute fast on the legalization, I would understand that this might be some kind of a pain point when we base our whole argumentation that strong on youth protection, prevention, and so on. If we just say, I want to have a liberal system, I want a legalization because we are free people, I think then it's important to have home grow.
Do you also see an issue with quality control if you're growing alone at home?
I mean, it might be not that controlled. There might be not that many procedures and so on. But as it's only for self-consumption, I think it's okay because you consume what you grow on your own. You're not allowed to sell, so it won't go into other sales channels. And if you have a industrial scale production, this is for pharmaceuticals the same as for any other product. There are very higher risks associated to product deficiencies, because your product will be consumed by so many other people. You might not even see that there is a risk. So quality control and quality assurance, I think, is in a industrial scale much more important. And if you allow the people to home grow and to consume on their own without the right to sell or to produce for others, then I think it's a fair risk they take on their own.
But homegrown really mostly will mean cannabis flower as an end product. It's unlikely that you will see a lot of home consumers do extraction and produce sophisticated other cannabis products, right? So
there are many people that do so. So I think I don't really have the rules on the Cannabis Control Act in my mind, but I think it's more about that you're allowed to grow the plants, that you're allowed to have a certain volume, a annual volume that is limited, and this is intended for self-consumption. But there are many people that have their own extractions, that do their tinctures, that do their oils, and I think this will be the next follow-up question, because it is even more complicated for the reason that that you mentioned, product quality, for example. You will have to manage different procedures. You will apply heat. It might be some kind of cooking in the kitchen, but it might have some risks as well. So I think
we see this in Switzerland as well. Sorry to interrupt. Mostly medical patients who are more educated and are actually doing their own extractions, tinctures, and so on, because they have a much deeper understanding of cannabis in general and how to use the plant and produce more sophisticated medication for themselves. In the recreational market, we don't really see anyone, at least not to my knowledge. Of course, I don't think it's a big thing. Maybe Jacob, do you have anything to add to this? Otherwise, I would like to have Kai weigh with his views.
No, that's it. I'm very excited to get some convincing arguments here.
Kai, it's your show.
Okay, yeah. So I'm in clear favor for home grow. Firstly, it's a simple product. It's not like brewing alcohol, like hard booze or something. You put a seed in the soil and look what happens. Of course, you need a lot of experience if you want to have a sophisticated result, which pleases yourself. Only a couple of people will do that. Not very many people, because it's really, you need a green thumb, we say, and if you don't have that, you just go to the store and buy different varieties. And but it's a very critical political topic, this home grow, because the home growers have supplied Germany for the last 6 decades, now to say we won't allow home grow, and we will see police raid and police actions coming into the homes of peoples looking for plants, and neighbors which are accusing their other neighbors, I saw a plant over there, go there. No, that's not the right thing to do. If we liberalize cannabis, if we have a new policy, if we stop criminalization, and if we legalize the plant, people should be allowed to grow at home. The Cannabis Control Act also already provides the regulations on how to secure the plant in the house, on your property. Also to protect your own kids in your household from entering the plant. There are provisions on fines if you don't do that properly. So this is all being, probably properly thought of, and on a human rights scale, or in terms of human rights, you can't prohibit the plant any longer, and people need to home grow. I don't think that this will be, I don't know what about America. what about the US? But this is a long tradition in California. They are all growers, and I don't think that's wise to prohibit it. Then you have another construction area of how not to do things.
Okay, I think we won't be able to find a full agreement between the two of you tonight, but perhaps we'll try to do that when we see each other in person in 2025 when COVID is over. Now, maybe just on a less cynical note, what's the timeline of these new regulations now? What's realistic? When is this going to happen?
As I said in the beginning, the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks are decisive. Then the basic outline will be agreed on by the new government, by the traffic light coalition. I think, as I said, the decriminalization will be the first step. Then the debates and hearings start. This will take whole 2022. So we can talk also about, do the quality needs to be GMP? How many levels below GMP the product can be, the quality can be. All these questions have to be discussed with stakeholders from the industry, with export nations, with domestic cultivators with their experience, etc. And this will take the whole 2022, the whole year. And after 12 months, after lots of hearings, lots of debates in Bundestags, we will, in the last quarter of 22, we will see the big outlines of the new law, of the new regulated market. And I suppose that the final decision in Bundestag will be in March, April 2023. Single convention is terminated, another half year waiting period, and in 2024 legal sales can start.
Jacob, do you think that's a realistic assessment?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's well calculated based on what are the necessary steps. So what is the homework? I could imagine as well that we have a positive signal quite early because the traffic light coalition, they have to prove that they can work together good on some topics, and it's a no-brainer and very easy, especially for the liberals and the Greens, two parties that are quite far from each other, to show we can work together, we can do something, we hold our word, we create a system that works. And I think most important is what Kai mentioned, is that we have decriminalization as fast as possible to allow people some kind of rehabilitation and to show that we are on the right way. And then it's obviously it will take some time, but I think 2 years is exactly what is possible if things are running smooth, if there's no second COVID or anything else that is too much in the political atmosphere.
Okay,
Jacob,
I see that we're already. Yes.
Can I ask Jacob, what do you think on product quality for the recreational market? I mean, GMP would a little bit be over the top for recreational products. Where are the points where you can slow that or loosen that down, the requirements?
I think what could be a good solution is that you have, for example, parts of GMP that is relating to end product quality, in terms of heavy metal, pesticides, and so on, so that you have a safe end product, and that you have a specification, a certificate of analysis, everything that you have for foods as well. If you want to list a new food at the big retail companies in Germany, you always have to show that your food is safe, especially if it's some kind of a new food. And I think the same should apply here. So you could take any pharmaceutical standards relating to the end product quality. What I think we don't need is too much of procedures and the part of GMP that is about quality management, very deep. and very strict limits on what are accepted deviations. So I think it doesn't matter if you have a specification for a flower to be 20% THC and is out of spec and thus not saleable if it's on 17.5 or 25%. So I would rather look on what is the end product quality, if it's safe, right, declared, so that you take the samples, do the analytics, and whatever is reached, for example, in terms of the THC, CBD levels, put it on the label, and that's fine. And don't discuss if it is out or inside your specification, because this is what adds much pain to the production, what adds much cost to the production, and what leads into much product to be wasted and destroyed. But for the end product safety, I'm still very supportive of taking what we already reached here, but don't waste too much time and money on pharmacovigilance, on deviation management, and all those topics that GMP is all around.
Will we see outdoor THC cannabis in Germany?
That was my next question, because the FDP wants to make Germany the export nation for medical cannabis. Right now, from what I understand, looking over the border, is that the majority of cannabis is imported actually into Germany, medical cannabis. A lot has to happen for Germany to become a net exporter. What has to happen, and how do you see it?
Yeah, so you are right that until June or July this year, we had 100% imports in Germany. And since July, the first company is now live, is producing the first domestically grown cannabis that is distributed to pharmacies. So something worked here. But I don't think that if we have a reasonable cultivation in Germany, and that shouldn't be inside a safe room, I don't think that we will be an export nation, because we might be initially an export nation if the overall global trade is still developing. But I mean, it is a plant, and it is growing best in favorable climate, and that's obviously not in Germany. And if you go for outside cultivation, then you have the climate issue. If you stay inside, you have energy costs, you have labor costs. And I think it's on the long run, we won't be a cannabis export nation. We might be a hub for Europe. We might be a hub for the globe as well. But products in the long run will be cultivated in sectors or in places with good climate, much sunlight, low labor costs, such as Latin America, maybe Africa, and many other worlds. And Kai, to your question, I think it might be an issue how to protect open field cultivation. It might be easier to have outdoor greenhouse and not the production as it is today in the medical sector in Germany inside a safe room with only artificial sunlight. So if you have a greenhouse, it might be easy to have the safety taken care of, like video surveillance, perimetric safe lines, and so on. So this would be easy, and I think from the perspective that the greens will add, from the climate perspective, there's no sense in growing the plants inside under artificial sunlight,
except for medical conditions.
Except for medical conditions, sure. So if you need the batch over batch specifications to be met, sure, and the standardized quality, and if you don't want to accept any deviations, yeah, then sure, it's only possible under the highest control of any climate light and nutritions.
I mean, the FDP, the liberals, demanded that Germany should become an export nation for medical cannabis. But that would mean we would have to extend the licenses of the already existing domestic cultivators and allow much more in-house, indoor cultivation facilities, which of course is a problem with the climate. Yeah.
I think for now, you just can continue to come across the border and get your super quality Swiss cannabis in Switzerland. We have a little bit of a headway, you know, from the last few years. And I think there's a lot of producers here with a lot of indoor cultivation experience who are really setting themselves up for the time when cannabis can be exported out of Switzerland. And I think a lot of companies are already in strong negotiations about what will happen when the market here opens up. So definitely you're going to see some more cannabis coming from Switzerland to Germany 2023, I would say. I think the time, Chris, is spot on. We're at 9.
We are. You know, and I had a few questions as you guys were running through all this stuff. And then I have to say that you guys, for maybe the first time in my experience, actually hit on every single question that I was going to ask you guys. So one of the questions that we got from the audience was just about the supply chains. And I know, Kai, that you asked this, you know, and Jacob, you mentioned that maybe the end product requirements for heavy metals, for testing, so on, should reflect what we require in the medical markets, but that maybe some of those intermediate steps don't need to be examined quite so closely if we're not going for a pharmaceutical market. You also, at the beginning of the presentation, mentioned that the price in those pharmaceutical markets you believe will remain higher than in the adult use markets. And that's sort of one of the major differences that we see here in the United States. Is one of the ways that we've tried to maintain those medical markets is by playing with the tax rates, lowering the tax rates in those medical markets. Generally, we have sort of similar supply chains for the medical and the adult use markets. We also don't have a medical market that is a true pharmaceutical market, right? And so our medical markets under state law are a little bit different than what you guys may consider a true pharmaceutical medical market. Do you see, you know, and I know you addressed this a little bit, but sort of what do you see the relative size of the medical versus the adult use markets to be as we move forward into the adult use realm? It sounds like in Germany, you feel that that may be sort of a small percentage of the overall market and that people are really going to tend towards that adult use market. Does that sound right, that medical market becomes, you know, significantly less important and significantly smaller than what we're seeing currently?
It might not become significantly smaller, but I think growth will maybe kind of slower, because if we have a overall estimated need of about 15 to 19 tons of medicinal cannabis, there is a factor 4x for very conservative estimations of recreational use. So compared to recreational use, medicinal use is not that high, but I don't think it's that all patients will shift, because there are good reasons to get the product. And I think you mentioned some very good points, that you could create incentives to remain in the medical system by tax reductions, by a revision of the price building mechanisms, because I think that the wholesale price for medicinal and recreational products will be somehow similar. The problem is how prices are built in the pharmacy, and this correlates with what pharmacies have to do. It's quite annoying for them. They have to do a lot. They have to identify the product. They have to do small, but they have to do analytics, documentation, and so on. It could be simplified for them, and then prices could be dropped, because the pharmacist won't claim to get a high markup because they have to do much about the product. If they don't have to do much about it, they will accept if they don't get a big markup. They want to earn some money, but they don't want to make the money they made 5 years ago.
And then I think the last question that I have, thank you for that answer. I think that really sort of gives us a good idea of what to look forward to. The last question that I sort of have is, how do you think this is both for you, Jacob, and Kai and Daniel, but we're seeing other countries, right? Luxembourg just implemented their adult use program. How, here in the United States, we've seen California implement adult use first. States like New York have learned from California's laws and then sort of sent some of those lessons back. And we're still waiting for some of those to be reintegrated into our jurisdiction here. what influence, how large is that influence going to have, right, of Luxembourg implementing an adult use program? Is that going to create a template for Germany's program, or do you think that Germany is going to sort of strike out in their own direction? We talked about some of those specific issues like home grow, but sort of as a general framework, do we think that Luxembourg is sort of creating a template for EU countries? Obviously, Switzerland falls outside of that, but where do we think that, how do we think that's going to influence the set of regulations that ultimately we'll see in Germany?
I mean, Luxembourg agreed on legalization already in 2018. And 3 years ago, they withdraw from legalization 3 weeks ago. And now they are going to implement a homegrown program, adult use program. That's it. So I always said, if Luxembourg is really going this way, it will be the pain in the ass of the EU. But now Germany will be the pain in the ass of the rest of the EU. But the new government will take the initiative. They will talk to the other countries. Hey, we are doing that. We're going for that. Please come on. Let's have some regulations. Let's sit together. Let us at least decriminalize or whatever. We will have, of course, border customs issues, but. I mean, you had these issues in the US, the same, I guess, from one state to another. If one was legalized, the other not. So you can handle that. That can't be an argument. Like probably the French government put pressure on Luxembourg. But if Germany leads the way, we will see other countries in Europe following.
Yes, Germany will be the role model. I mean, Germany is much bigger than Luxembourg, has a much higher economic power, and is just obviously much more relevant to the European Union. And I think that's why we have the leverage here on our side. And if there's a political will, all those European issues will be taken care of.
And I would like to, with Switzerland, we are unbeatable.
I would like to second. I would like to second that, actually, and maybe for the audience also an update, because in mid-October there's a parliamentary initiative that was launched a while back, and now also the Health Commission of the National Council, it's like the Senate equivalent in Switzerland, decided with a 9-2 vote in favor of a controlled legalization of recreational cannabis. So it's in process. The idea is to have cultivation, production, trade, and consumption totally newly regulated. And it's probably going to take a while. It's 2 years at least for the sister commission in the National Council to now work on the legislative process and so on. But we have set the basis for legalization of recreational cannabis in Switzerland as well. And I very much doubt that Switzerland will follow that model of Luxembourg. We're not in the EU, but we're very much in the middle of Europe. So we keep our eyes very much open to what's happening around us.
Well, I appreciate everything you guys have brought to us today. An incredible presentation, and certainly a blind spot for me. So thank you so much for your time. Are there any closing comments that you'd like to leave us with as we close out this webinar?
I would just like to thank my fellow panelists for the super interesting discussion. They made my life very easy as a moderator.
And thank you for moderating, Daniel. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Chris, for having us and giving us this forum to discuss from a legal perspective. I think this is very important that us as lawyers focus on how a policy might work. And consider not only all those arguments that passionates and enthusiasts have, but it always has to be a policy that works. And I think this is important that we lawyers connect here and work on a role model that is suitable for global free trade in cannabis.
Well, we look forward to seeing what Germany comes up with. And of course, we are always here to support your efforts. So we do hope that you'll reach out for any specific questions or support that we can give you. So thank you all again. We really appreciate your time. Good evening there in Europe. And we will see you all very, very soon. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to close this one out.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.